when people start to distort and misrepresent like the character and nature of Christ,
That's right.
and especially from an authoritative position, like our good friend James Tallarico, as a Christian training to be a pastor, you have to love Judas more than Jesus. No, you don't. You have to love Jesus more than it. Welcome into another episode of the Under God podcast. My name is Nate. I'm here with Pastor Daniel. Good to see you today, man.
Good to be here with you, Pastor
I think
Nate.
we chased off Pastor Stephen. We were so much talk about unity. He decided to diversify the podcast by leaving us this time. But we want to pick up where we left off. So in the last episode, if you missed it, go back and listen to that one first. We talked about unity. We really walked through Psalm 133 and kind of what was being said there. And then we went to Ephesians 4 and talked about, what unity looks like in the context of the new covenant. But one of the things we all know is that unity doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't tend to come easy for people.
You have to work for it.
You got to work for it. And if you think about this, like those of you who are married or are on your way, when you fall in love with somebody, you fall in love, which is such a dumb thing to say. When you fall into lust and excitement with someone, and later you figure out what it means to actually
a whole nother episode we have.
It's another episode for another time. But when you first get into that relationship, a lot of times part of why you think you're in love and you think this is the one for me is because it's easy.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I just always feel good around this person. They
She's
made me
pretty.
feel so good.
Yeah,
She's so pretty. She's fun to look at. I want to spend more time just looking at her, And by the way, after almost 20 years of marriage, my favorite thing to look at is still my wife.
And it should be.
She is stunning. But truthfully, walking out, and I shared a little story about this, walking out that unity and learning what it means to actually love someone, not just like someone or lust someone. Learning how to love someone takes a lot of work. And marriage is just a microcosm. It's like it's probably the place where God can do the most work in you. But it also, it happens with, you and me, we have to fight for it. Me and Mr. Producer sometimes over here, we have to fight for it, right? And so we have to fight for unity for anything that matters. It takes fighting. And one of the things that I have found in both just being a guy who's been married for a while, raising kids, and pastoring a church is I think there are two primary threats with unity. There's more than two, of course, but the two primary are, I believe, are pride and dishonesty.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Without those things, you've got a breeding ground for conflict.
Yeah, well, pride is honestly...
I should say, with those things.
With those things, you have a breeding ground for conflict. That's right. Pride, I want to talk about that one first. The fact of the matter is, when you have pride in your life, you have a distorted image of who you are. You have a distorted image of who everybody else is, and it's basically like a landmine, right? Anybody can step on it at any time. And if people cross your pride, then that's when people tend to lash out the most. And they're not seeking what we talked about in the last episode, which is seeking the unity in the Spirit. In that moment, what they're actually seeking to do is prop up their own image of themselves, which is made out of pride, and it's destructive to people's life. I've seen that time and time again. And then the other thing is, being dishonest with people. And I want to get into both of those and what they look like. But the truth is that when you're dishonest, you can't find unity because you're not actually talking the same language of the truth. You're speaking in a way where you can't go out and search and find anything that's real because you're living in a fantasy land or you're living in an abstract universe that's just made out of deceit. And so it prevents you from having any unity with other people because you're living in a world that's not even true. It's distorted. It's perverted.
Totally. So, and when we think about like, how do we know lying is bad? There's a lot of ways but we've talked a lot on this podcast about the 10 Commandments, which thankfully
the 10 Commandments.
Just this morning I dropped off a bunch of
posters to have them in the schools. I was about to say.
Yeah, man. It's good. That's some of the easiest money I've ever spent is buying those posters to donate to schools to put them in the classrooms. But when people think about the 10 Commandments and lying, usually what probably goes through their head is like, thou shalt not lie. But actually it's not what it says. So let me just go on and read this text because it's really interesting how it relates to our conversation today. This commandment actually says, you must not, or you shall not, bear false witness against your neighbor.
Whoa.
Bear false witness against your neighbor. Now, I just want to point this out. In the 10 Commandments, God he only gave 10. And they are the basis of our legal system for Western society. It's not, thou shalt not lie. We could simplify it and say that, and don't hear me saying, sure, go tell a lie, because the 10 Commandments don't say don't lie. What it says, though, is don't bear false witness against your neighbor. This is actually a relational unity commandment.
That's right.
It's all about don't go talk crap about somebody else and say things that aren't true that harm your neighbor against your neighbor. What do you think about that, Daniel?
I think that's absolutely right. And I love that we did a whole episode, and I encourage people to go back and listen to that one. I actually was having this conversation with some of my family, extended family members the other day, and they were, and we were talking about lying in another context. You know, do you ever have the ability to lie? And they're like, well, the Bible says don't lie. And I said, actually, that's not exactly what the Bible says. And we can talk about some of the nuances there. Go back and check out that episode for sure. But the truth is that there's a couple of things that lying does. And I just want to dive right into the first one, being that dishonesty, lying, it denies the truth, right? So because you are starting from a false premise, that's what lying essentially does, is it denies that what is true, and you want to start from somewhere else instead. And so you're laying this foundation that's going to lead you into something that's destructive because you're not living in reality, right? Truth is just the words that we say put to reality. It's exactly what it is, right? It is what it appears to be. Dishonesty says this is going to appear as something different, right? It's going to morph the way it is. It's twist it, pervert it in some way, so that it will be misunderstood. And that's a big deal. This is what we're finding in Romans 1:18. It says, but God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. So in other words, our sin suppresses what's true, and it chooses to live in this distorted reality that's created by our dishonesty. And here's what it goes on to say. It says,
what does it produce?
It says they know the truth about God because he made it obvious to them. So what they're saying is everybody can look around and see. Everybody can look around and know some of the things that are true, right? That doesn't mean you have like fleshed out every single theological question ever, but you understand the reality of the world by looking around, but you choose to suppress it for your own gain in order to live in dishonesty. And it says, forever since the world was made, people have seen the earth and sky, through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. But we use dishonesty to suppress the fundamental truths and choose to live in fantasy.
So it says they know the truth about God. Here's what's known about God and what's so obvious is that he exists. Right?
He's there.
His invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature. Like Paul's not even hiding this. He's not masking this. Here's what you know. God exists. Everyone knows it. Even the atheists. This is why they're so angry, because they know what they're saying is not true. These atheists that go out and talk about how there is no God. Those are like the most angry people you've ever met. I mean, they can tell a joke and laugh, but when you cross their will, you will see anger.
Oh my goodness.
You've never seen before. Because deep down inside, they know that all of this didn't come from nothing. They know it. They know it. And so here's what happens. When you know the truth about God and you know that he exists, there are implications for that. If there is a God, then he must have done this on purpose. Therefore, he must have something to say about who we are and how we live. And when we work in opposition to that, that's suppressing the truth through our wickedness. And here's what suppressing the truth does. It puts distance between us and God. When we deny what's true, which is that he exists, and we distance ourselves from the reality of God, it leads to spiritual drift, and eventually it will lead to your ultimate destruction. But there's another reason for that, and that is that dishonesty, it doesn't just deny what's true. It's not like an all outside there kind of thing. It actually darkens you as an individual. Like it dims the light inside of you where you can't even see and know what's true anymore. Would you read for us Romans 1:21?
Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks, and they began to think of foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. You know, I want to make a point about this because you were just talking about crossing people's will. You were just talking about how, hey, when you really cross their will, you cross their pride, whatever, when you're talking to one of the people who's believed these lies, they get visceral and they get angry. And here's why. I want to explain this to people because it's actually really important to understand. When you are confronting people who are living in a lie with the truth, what you are doing to them psychologically is you are trying to kill them. Okay. What do I mean by that? Because that's quite a claim.
It's quite a claim.
Quite a claim. When people live in a reality that's distorted and perverted and they're confronted with the truth, they have to supplant the entire foundation of their reality in order to embrace that truth. And so what that means is that their image of themselves and the entire world
Yeah.
that they've built their life on has to die in order to accept that truth as the foundation.
Yeah.
You are offering them death. By the way, this is exactly what Jesus tells us. He tells us that those who want to cling to their life will lose it, but those who give up their life
Yep.
will find it. And that's what happens is people see this and they're like, if I accept that what God says is true,
Yep.
my entire world is shattered because my world is built on this lie that he's not true. And so you're going to kill everything that I know myself is. Who I know that I am, I have to lay that down if I have to accept this truth.
Wow.
And that's a massive shift for people. It's scary. They're literally looking and they're saying, I have claimed to be this person for however many years of my life. Since I bought into this lie, whether it was in childhood or in adulthood, that I just gave up the truth of Christianity, I've created an image of myself and I have it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose it. And you're telling me that this is the truth. And if I accept that that's truth, everything that I've built in my life has to die in order to take on the fruit of the gospel.
Wow.
It's a big deal.
That is a really big deal. It's really profound. And part of the reason, again, like, we have to be honest about who God is and who God isn't. When we begin to twist that, everything else changes. I actually want to show you a clip of what happens when somebody totally denies the reality of Christ.
All right, let's do it.
If Jesus were here today, he would be a clinic escort, distracting women from the hatred of the protesters. Or an abortion doula, holding women's hands and offering support and love as they end their pregnancies. And I expect he would have a stern word for self-righteous legislators who use abortion as a political issue rather than showing compassion for the people seeking abortions.
So that's what you get when you abandon what is true. You come up with crazy ideas about Jesus. And by the way, this is one of the reasons that on this podcast, we're not here to call out everybody that we disagree with or every little thing. You know, I've made some jokes about some other people, but when people start to distort and misrepresent like the character and nature of Christ,
That's right.
And especially from an authoritative position, like our good friend James Tallarico, as a Christian training to be a pastor, you have to love Judas more than Jesus. No, you don't. You have to love Jesus more than anything. Jesus, you're in it. Yeah. You find this lady telling you that Jesus would be an abortion doula. Like, give me a break. But I highlight this because I think most people can look at that and go, yeah, that's crazy. What we don't realize is how many times we do the exact same thing inside of ourselves. And we start to think even things about God that aren't true, like God just wants me to be happy.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't. He wants you to
Be holy.
Yeah. God is only loving. No, he's not. He's also a God who is also just, God changes with the time. Surely he gets us, we see those. No, he doesn't. He cares about all this stuff. And so it's important that we understand that God does care more about our happiness than our holiness, that he combines love and justice together. That's what makes him actually righteous. And he may get you as a person, but he doesn't
affirm you.
What a part of your life that's not his best. So anyway, so we see that all these bad ideas about God, when we start to believe things that are untrue about God, all the way from he doesn't exist to he just only loves me just the way I am.
Yeah.
All those things are just as untrue. To say God doesn't exist and he only loves me. Those things are both so untrue that they lead to spiritual blindness. And when you're spiritually blind, you can't see anybody else. And go ahead and read us. Number 3 is what dishonesty is.
Yeah, dishonesty degrades other people. So when we degrade other people, what we're doing is we're agreeing with what the devil says about them instead of what God says about them. Meaning that we're viewing them through this, again, distorted, perverted, dishonest lens. And because of that, we view them as all sorts of things, but not as what God says they are. We view them as less than us. We end up humiliating, belittling, and disrespecting people in a way that ultimately detracts from their inherent worth as image bearers of God. Remember the Imago Dei. You are made in the image of the Creator, but we lessen them in our eyes because when we're dishonest, right, we're not living our life based on the truth of God. We live in a perverted, distorted, dishonest lens, and everything you do views everything else through that lens. It passes through it, and you see this distorted version of other people, and it's really easy. It plays into the next thing we're going to talk about in a second. It plays into your pride, right? Plays into how you view the world. plays into how you view others, and therefore it comes out in how you treat others.
Yeah. Well, when we do this, we degrade people, we dehumanize them. But what I mean by that is we start to see people as like commodities.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and this is where Paul goes, verse 24 and 25. So God abandoned them to do whatever shameful things their heart desires. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's bodies. They traded the truth about God for a lie, so they worshiped and served things God created instead of the Creator himself, who is worthy of eternal praise. So we see this playing out in our society. People, because they're not honest about who God is, then they can't be honest about who people are, and they begin to treat people wrong, and all of this can kind of fuel ungodly conflict.
Actually, I'm going to take us down a really crazy rabbit hole.
Okay,
I just decided it. I just decided it mid episode. So
here we go. Hold on, I'm gonna give me my seatbelt, Mr. Producer. Get your seatbelt on, buckle up. I don't know where we're going.
All right, everybody, we're going to talk about OnlyFans. All right,
about what?
OnlyFans. Do you know
is that? What is that, like Only Farmers?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. I heard about somebody on Only Farmers.
Yeah, so
I'm just kidding. Yes, I've heard about OnlyFans.
Yes. So this is what happens, right? When you view people, that's like the pinnacle of what happens when you view people as a commodity. And what you see argued a lot of the time, even by quote unquote conservative, more libertarian leaning people, is that you begin to view people as just whatever you want in the moment, affirm everything, affirm how you want to live your life, and just take the pleasure, right? This hedonism, by the way, that's what hedonism is. It's a fancy word to mean you're chasing your own pleasure in every moment and every desire. You view people as a means to that end. And so our culture has embraced this. I have seen this just destroy young men in our church who, you know, we try and help as long as they will walk with us, young men who want to come in and they need help. And there's this massive pornography problem. And before, it was this particular website that's blown up, and you see it all over, you know, every podcast talks about the stuff that happens there. These young women are literally selling themselves, and they're degrading themselves, and people look at them and they'll say, well, it's okay if it makes them happy. You know, it's okay if it makes them money. It's okay because they're not hurting anybody else. And my response to that is it is absolutely not okay.
Yeah.
What you are doing is you are viewing people who are made in God's image the same way that you view like
a car,
the same way that you view like food. It's an appetite to be satiated. It's just for your pleasure and your betterment, no matter whether or not it's to their
not for your betterment, but
detriment. It's not to their betterment. It's not at all, by the way. It's the exact opposite, right? And it leads people down a path to destruction. But when you're not honest about the fact that people are made in the image of God, and because of that, you have inherent worth. And because of that, there's actually a moral ethic by which you are called to live. And by the way, there's moral boundaries and a framework that you're supposed to live in. And then you see this world that's teaching these young women to go sell themselves and prostitute themselves online for young men and other men's perversions. And then this culture that's telling the men, well, it's okay because it's only online and it's not real. And so it doesn't, yes, it is. It's degrading you. It's degrading them. It's destroying you. You've believed a lie, which is this. You are less than what God says that you are. And I just have to tell you, look, the Bible tells young men, like, flee from sexual immorality, like run away from that stuff. And I'll tell you, it all starts when you believe that you are less than what God has to say about you. The women and men who know who they are in Christ are not the ones who end up online doing these things because they're able to look at themselves and say, I know my worth. I know that I'm made in God's image, and nothing is worth selling that online. But it's an epidemic that I've seen in our culture. It's an epidemic that you see. You get on like any social media site and, you know, you have people that are affirming essentially, hey, whatever, you know, as long as it's not hurting anybody. But that's not true. It is. It's destroying people.
Well, the two biggest idols in our world today are sex and money.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
And maybe power. We'll go the trifecta here.
Sure.
Of money, sex, and power. But like most evil comes from one of those three things, you know, like, and it actually is, you know, the first time I heard about OnlyFans was on a financial website where I'm reading about these women who are making all this crazy money. I'm like, what in the world? They're making that much money? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, like Dave Ramsey's talking about, and I've heard him on his show addressing like how much money these young women are making.
Oh, wow.
It's like, is it worth selling your soul?
Well, and that's where I was going. Like, I'm like, I can understand where the draw is. Just for the women, it's like, well, I just stay home and take my clothes off all day, and I don't have to go get a job. And then I just get paid like literally millions of dollars. But when I read it, I just thought it's not worth it. It's not worth it. The cost is higher.
What is it worth if you gain the whole world but lose
Your soul. And that's just to get us back out of, that's a great detour, but to bring us back, that's what dishonesty ultimately does. Is
That's
it
what the
destroys
degrading,
that all the degrading leads to a total destruction of your relationship with God. And that's Romans 1:28 that says, since they thought it foolish to acknowledge God. That's dumb. Think about what the world says today. All these smart, these smart intellectuals and their freaking universe telling you, you're a fool believing God.
Ridiculous.
Since you thought it foolish to acknowledge God, what does he do? He abandons them to their foolish thinking to let them do things that should never be done. And the result is spiritual separation. So living a dishonest life literally creates this barrier between you and God. And when you got a barrier between you and God, it kind of works both ways. It's not just that like you're not feeling the conviction. You're also not going to feel the love. You're not going to feel the grace. You're not going to feel the guidance, and you're dang sure not going to get the empowerment of the Spirit to live the life that you want to live. So, so that of course begs the question, like, how do I guard against honesty? Because it's not just like if you ask me, I don't know, what time are you going to be here? And I tell you 9:30, but it's really 9:35, and I'm like trying to race. That's not what we're talking about here. And everybody, has experienced the little white lie. We think it's all okay. We kind of fudge and make the lines, and we think, well, let me just be a little more truthful here and a little more truthful there. No. We're talking about like dishonesty of the heart, which, by the way, all that stuff does connect to. Yeah. There's really not such thing as a little white lie.
Yeah, there's not.
But how do I guard against the kind of dishonesty that will wreck my entire relationship with God?
Yeah. Well, how do I guard myself against the destruction, against this whole path? And the answer is you take it back to the beginning and you choose to be honest with God first, right? Everything stems from your relationship with the Lord. So what does choosing to be honest with God look like? Well, it looks like saying, okay, God, I'm not going to try in my prayer life. I'm going to have a prayer life. First of all, you have to have a prayer life. So start there. If you don't get a prayer life, it matters. Get a Bible life, like read the Bible every day. And then ask God to examine you, right? Say, God, I want you to show me the parts of my life that I need worked on, because I know that I have them, and I really want you to change those things. And when God confronts you with those things, you have to do them, right? But say, God, I am going to live by your standard, not by my standard. I am going to choose to be honest with you first, because if you're not honest with God, then one, you're not taking in his image for who you're supposed to be. So you're not living in his worldview. And
it's asking the question that David asked, search me, O God.
Yeah.
Know my heart. See if there be any wicked way inside of me. He's like, I don't just leave.
Do not cast me from your presence.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But all that, no. The don't cast me from your presence, that comes much later. Well, that's after the search me, know me, show me if there's anything inside of me that I don't even know about. Like that's that's being honest with God and being honest with yourself, which, by the way, being honest with yourself is not something you can do by yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good point, because if you're trying to only be honest with yourself by yourself, then you're going to miss stuff. So there's this really cool, I don't know, have you ever heard of the Johari window? Do you know about this?
No.
This is a really
Tell me.
good tool that I have in my toolbox, which it's a window that looks like this, right? And there's things that I know about myself that nobody else knows about me, right? And then there's things that other people know about me that I don't know about myself.
What's this window called?
And the Johari window.
Johari window.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's things that I know about myself that other people know about me. And then there's things I don't know about myself and other people don't know about me, right? Things that just kind of live in the void. And I have, like, they're mysteries that God is going to help reveal to me. And he's the only one that can show them to me. But there is this very big window of things that other people know about me that I do not know about myself. There are things my wife has a better grasp on about who I am than I do, because I have an inherently distorted view of myself, because I still am working out my pride, my salvation in fear and trembling. Yeah. There's all those things. There's things you know about me, Pastor Nate, because you've watched me operate and work. Sometimes they might be even good things. You might be like, hey, you're actually good at this and you think you're not, but you are. Or, hey, you're not good at this and you think that you are, right? And there are things that you have to be honest about.
They're a really good podcaster, by the way.
Oh, well, so you are too, Pastor Nate. And so handsome. Yeah. Like,
now you're lying again.
There's things that you don't know about yourself, and you need people that you're walking, again, in unity with, to be able to say, hey, Pastor Nate, I want you to know, I know you think you handled that situation really, really well. I think you handled it worse than you might think. And, like, you're honest with them, and it just is, okay, well, if that's true, then let me reflect on that and be honest with myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that to me. And that's another part of the value of walking with other people.
Yeah. And by the way, when you embrace correction like that, and then you get on the other side of it and you see how it makes you better,
Yeah, that's
you do that a few times, and you're kind of like, all right, tell me something about me that I don't know about me.
Yeah.
And you really do want to know. You know?
Which is why the proverb says over and over again that only fools despise correction, that why wise people love it. And it's like, well, why? Because I know that it makes me better.
Yeah.
Right. So
That's
anyway.
right. So Galatians 3:9 says this. It just makes it really plain. Don't lie to each other.
Yeah.
You've stripped off your old sinful nature and all its wicked deeds. Now, again, we talked about the two biggest threats against unity, which is pride and dishonesty.
Yeah.
And so, but in all of this, what happens is when, because we're dealing with prideful people, of which we are, because we deal with dishonest people, of which sometimes can be us, we end up and find ourselves in a lot of conflict. And conflict is actually an opportunity to get back on the same page.
Yeah.
When there's something off, when there's the dissonance that we talked about in the last episode, like when you hear dissonant notes, the way you fix it is to get one of those notes on the right note.
Yeah.
Where it creates harmony again. That's a process of physically moving a finger or changing something or shifting the pitch of your voice or whatever. And that's really, if you can think about that, if you can think about when you and me have conflict, if what I can think about is, well, actually, I just have my finger on one wrong note on a guitar, I just need to move it to the other note or to the other string or slide it down one fret, or, I hit the wrong note on the piano. It's actually one over to the left. It's those small adjustments. But if somebody comes and goes, man, that sounds really bad. Don't tell me it sounds really bad. I worked really hard at this, And it's like, no, just move this finger here. Now it sounds better.
Yeah.
That's what conflict resolution is. And so I do, before we finish with this, there's a few other things we have to talk about, but one is conflict resolution. And I think this is actually the most important thing that people can learn after learning I'm a sinner who needs a savior, is like, I got to learn how to walk together with other people in the body. So let's talk about 4 ways to deal with conflict. Some of them work well and some of them don't. The first one won't, but tell us about the first one.
First one is to deal with conflict my way, right? And so this is really where the pride plays in. This is okay, I know that I'm right. I know that I'm the one we're going to work out the situation for my betterment and get my result, right? Yep. We're going to do it my way, no matter whether or not it helps the whole situation. I'm the boss. I said so, right? This is my way. This is a pride-filled response, right? Why? Because ultimately, you're still looking around at others and you're viewing them as less than yourself, and you're trying to find resolution, even if you think like, I'm just trying to find a resolution, but really like, I'm the one who knows best. It's because you have a distorted view of other people that comes from your pride, right? And so it says, hey, look, I'm going to try and force my will on other people. And we all have, 1, known people like this, and 2, been this person.
Have been people like this. This is by the way, man, if you have ever, like when I say these phrases and they've come out of your mouth, then this is you. I'm the man of the house. I decide what we're doing. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Those statements may all be true and could be right, but if you find yourself having to say them,
that's right.
It's because you're still trying to deal with things your way. Now, this is this is the aggressive pride-filled response, but there's also a regressive pride-filled response, which is to actually stop caring. And that's you could deal with it my way. That's a problem.
Yeah.
You can also go, fine, just deal with it your way.
Yeah.
For the sake of peace, I'm just going to walk away.
Which is it's false peace, which we talked about that last
not
episode.
actual
it's
peace.
not real peace.
All it is
right?
calm.
It's right. It's just like calm in the moment, but there's no peace if in a state of calm in the moment, you're worried that like a monster's going to jump out of the closet because you didn't deal with it and it's going to get you. Like there's no peace there. You're living in an anxious place, and it's like in the moment there's peace and there's calm, and like the waves aren't here right now, but I know that any minute the storm is going to come up because I didn't deal with it. Yeah.
And this comes up all the time. It's like if you know that if you know that there's some problem between us, and for whatever reason you're aware that I'm like really mad at you, and or something happened, or I know there's conflict or whatever, and I come to you and I go, hey man, do we need to talk? I feel like maybe we need to talk about something, and you go, no, I'm fine.
Yeah,
it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Can I just tell you, like, if you know there's a problem, don't say it's okay.
Yeah.
Don't say it's fine when it's not. Like, be honest, because what that's a different kind of pride going, just have it your way. Just anything to not have to talk to you, anything to not have to get exposed again for maybe what I did wrong, like just anything for the sake of peace. But like you said, it's not really peace. And then there's another bad way that you can deal with conflict. What's that?
It's halfway, right? So like, okay, your way, my way. Let's just kind of meet halfway, but neither of us are really fully engaging the problem. We're still wrestling internally, and we're going to like say some of the right words. But again, just seeking peace in the moment, we kind of only halfway deal with it. And we're going to say that we deal with it, right? But we're not actually going to deal with the core issues. We're not actually going to dig deep. We're not actually going to own our parts. We're going to deal with it halfway. And on the last episode, I talked about how my wife called this kind of out in me, and she said, hey, you're dealing with things halfway, right?
Yeah.
You're saying the right things. You're checking the boxes, but you're not actually wrestling with the deeper things. Like you're owning your part. You're saying, all right, in my mind, here's something I could have done better, whatever. I'm going to spit that out. I'm going to own it, right? And I'm sitting there going, well, I am owning my part, and all this stuff. But she's like, you're not actually hearing out the thing that I'm saying to you. You're just finding the thing that you're comfortable saying you messed up instead of the thing that I'm saying I need you to fix. You're not actually dealing with the full thing. You're dealing with it halfway.
Yeah. So you've got my way, your way, halfway. Let's go to the correct way, which is God's way. So listen, if you've been listening to this and you're starting to tune out, or maybe you got us on 2x speed, which honestly I enjoy listening to us faster than slower, sometimes too. But I'm going to suggest maybe for this next part here, before we wrap up, we're going to show you God's way to resolve conflict, and this may actually save your life. It may save some key relationships. It might save you your job. It might save your marriage. Might save your relationship with a good friend or with a parent or with a child. And so I want to encourage you to really lean in to we're going to move through these pretty quickly. We're not going to belabor them, but just give us the next 10 to 15 minutes to really help you understand how to resolve conflict God's way. Daniel, why don't you take us through the first point?
So the first thing in handling conflict God's way is to, one, act first. And now this doesn't mean that if the other person recognizes it and acts first, like you can't, you're doomed in the conflict resolution. What it does mean is that if you're the one who realizes there's conflict, then you need to go and deal with it first. You need to not wait on somebody else to do something. You don't get to sit and wait around and hope that the other person finds a way to resolve it and you're okay, right? You go take responsibility for it. It says in Matthew 18, if another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense.
Not wait.
Go
wait.
Right now.
Go.
Which, by the way, I'm somebody who, if I know that there's conflict, I can't find peace in my spirit. Like I cannot. I have this thing in me, and God has put it there. I firmly believe, because I will not let something sit there if I think that there's conflict. And like you have to go seek it out, because I think that what happens as you become mature in Christ is you realize that when there's not genuine peace, you're just like, I can't live in a place of faux peace, of like fakeness. And so I promise it is better if you just act, like deal with it right now. Don't let it sit and wait. It says if the other person listens and confesses, you will have won that person back. If you're unsuccessful, take one or two others with you and go back again. Be ambitious, be unrelenting. Don't just let it settle, so that everything you say may be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. If the person refuses to listen, take your case to the church. Then if she won't accept the church's decision, he or she won't accept the church's decision, treat that person as a pagan or as a corrupt tax collector. All right, unpack that for us a little bit, Pastor.
So I mean, there's a lot there, obviously. I'm going to simplify this. Go to the other person. So take action. Go to them privately. Talk about it. And again, if they confess, if you're able to find agreement, then you've won that person. The other thing I want to mention, because Pastor Stephen touched on this in the setup episode for this one, don't let the sun go down on your anger.
That's right.
And I just want to mention a couple things about that. So first of all, I do think that a literal understanding of that is a pretty good way to understand it. So, if there's a fight, like try not to go to bed without resolving that. If there's a relational conflict, I'm not talking about confusion. I'm not talking about, are you maybe seeing a pattern and you're still evaluating something? It's not what I'm talking about. But when there's an obvious, like there's been a breach, there's been a conflict, there's been a violation, a relational trust broken, whatever. When you go to sleep, I think he said it before, when you go to sleep, the devil goes to work. But here's what also happens. When you sleep, the emotions grow and the facts shrink.
That's true.
And this happens all the time. It's like people will go without, having a resolution or even talking about stuff, and they'll feel worse and worse, but they'll eventually, they'll forget, I don't know why I'm mad at this person. I just don't like that person anymore. And it's all because the facts shrunk and the emotions grew. But I think another thing, when you talk about don't let the sun go down, what's the sun going down? It's the end of a day, but it's also the end of a season. It's the end of a thing. In other words, I think another way you can interpret this is just because you got angry, don't breach the relationship and walk away.
Yeah,
Don't just walk away because you got mad, somebody hurt your feelings, and you're just, I'm done with them. Don't let the sun go down while there's still unresolved anger. Don't let the day end. Don't let the season end. Don't let the relationship end without going and doing the hard work of trying to work out whatever that problem was. Now, when you go to somebody, this is crucial. And I talked about this in the last episode too. Like when it came to my wife, it's like, hey,
Yeah.
first of all, just so you know, like I forgive you. I'm not even mad at you anymore. So I just want you to know that's not why I'm coming. I'm coming to own my part. That's the second piece of this. So you've got to first act first. But when you do, act first is not, let me just tell you everything that you did. No. It's actually like, if there's any way you can let the other person off the hook, like do that first.
Yeah.
And then begin to take your own part in it. Even if it's like if you think it's 0.0000009, that's your part to play in it. Like take that part. That's called humility. And there's some instruction from Jesus about this as well in Matthew 7.
I do. I want to read this verse, but before I do, I actually want to make one point, which you just talked about a second ago, which is the distortion that happens if you let time linger in between, which is I had to look it up while you were talking because I wanted to make sure I had it right. So this has been studied, and it's up to 40% worse. Your memory recall, free recall is like, hey, I'm remembering an event, I'm taking the time and thinking about it, I'm not under closure and anything like that. On average, you're 20 to 40% worse at recalling something if there's only one night of sleep in between the event happening and you thinking about it the next time. So one night of sleep. So that's the difference, by the way, between going right away and waiting and letting it linger, because you're like you said, the facts shrink because your recall's worse. I knew that stat. I had to pull it up and wanted to remember it. That's like crazy how different it is. When we talk about the next thing, which is really owning your part, Jesus does have some good words for us. And this is one of the most famous passages in Scripture, Matthew chapter 7. It says, why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye when you can't see past the log in your own eye? You're a hypocrite. First, get rid of the log in your own eye. Then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Wow. I mean, the truth is that what Jesus is saying here is he's saying, if you're approaching a situation and you haven't dealt with your part of it first, if you haven't dealt with the things that you have wrong in your own life, then you need to go and you need to deal with yourself first.
Yeah.
Instead of being the person that walks down the street and points out everything that's wrong about everybody else, how about you take a minute and you think about all of the things that you have wrong with you? I promise I have lots of things wrong with me. And if my primary concern is dealing with the things that are wrong with everybody else and not dealing what's wrong with me, I'm leading myself down a path to my own destruction.
Yeah, it's always wild to me when I talk to people who have so many issues with so many other people, but you never hear them talk about their issues.
Yeah, that's crazy. They're all perfect.
Is this all you do? Is just sit around and talk about everybody else?
Horrible. It's a terrible way to live, by the way.
I sometimes tell people, and like I'm a professional repenter, and it's not because I'm so holy, it's because I'm so messed up that I find myself just having to do it all the time. Like I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry, and I don't mean like I'm sorry, like I'm patronizing you, but repent, by the way, means I'm changing direction. So it's actually like it's a confirmation that I went in the wrong direction there, and now I'm letting you know I'm going in a different direction. It's not that like I'm sorry, like for somebody to go, it's okay. It's like, no, I want you to know that I know I was going the wrong direction and now I'm going the right direction, and here's what it is, like an articulate, careful thing. So that's really important that we do. Another thing, if you want to resolve conflict, you've got to learn how to stink and listen to people.
That's right.
You got to learn how to listen to people.
Here's the thing, James 1:19, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. So quick to listen is such a big thing. Why? Because the truth is, in conflict, people are hurt. Whether you really hurt them or somebody else hurt them, and it doesn't matter. You need to take the time and be willing to listen for the thing that's causing them pain.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that we have to learn and practice, especially as men. A lot of times you want to skip ahead and you want to just solve a problem with facts and logic, and you don't take the time to listen for the hurt that's behind what people have going on. And if they don't feel heard, then they're not going to be willing to listen to what you say, because they don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I'm going to connect this to our next step, which is to consider the other person's perspective, because you got to do both of these. You got to listen to be able to consider. And here I want to just get super practical for a second. What I'm about to tell you it really can revolutionize your conversations, especially when they're critical or crucial conversations that are hard. They're rooted in conflict, they're rooted in disagreement. And that is something called reflective listening.
Yeah.
I talk about this a lot. Anytime I'm doing any kind of marriage counseling or trying to help people resolve conflict, sometimes I'll referee conversations for people as a pastor. It's like, hey, we tried the Matthew 18, like we went to each other and it's not working. We need somebody to sit and help us. I'll sit down. And one of the things I'll do, Daniel, and it gets really frustrating for people, but I'll do it, is if someone gives a perspective before the other person can give their response, they have to first restate what they think the other person heard.
Yeah.
So if I come to you and go, man, you really offended me when you told me that you hate my new shirt.
Yeah.
And then what you would do if you're practicing reflective listening is, before you said, I never said that I hated your shirt. That's not what I said about your shirt. What you would do is you go, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying first. What I think I heard you say is that you think that I said that I hate your shirt, and that really hurt you when you heard that. Is that what you want me to understand? And then you would say, or the other person would say, yes, that's what I said. Yeah. First of all, just doing that helps people know, like, I've been heard.
Yeah.
So often conflict happens because one person says, you said you hate my shirt, and you're going, I didn't ever say that.
Yeah, that's not what I said at all.
I said blah, 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 blah. And you missed it, like, okay, but they received that. Another thing I talk a lot about is how intent is different than impact.
That's right.
And so we're really, really good at letting ourselves off the hook if we believe our intention was right, even if the impact was that it destroyed the other person.
Yeah.
And so when you practice, the reflective listening and considering other people's perspective, you get a chance to understand the impact of your words. And I'll tell you, like, this is something I've had to work on a lot, and I still do, is I frequently find out, probably my number one point of repentance with people is when I find out that my impact on them was different than what my intent was when I came to them.
Yeah, I used to have a pastor that would say it like this: your direction, not your intention, determines your destination. Doesn't matter where you think you're going or where you want to go. It matters what you actually did, right? If I intend to drive to McDonald's, but I drive to Arby's, I'm not going to be at McDonald's no matter how much I intended it. If I get lost, it doesn't matter. Like, if you take the wrong steps, then that's where you're going to end up, no matter what
100%.
What intentions you had. I love that, Pastor.
Yeah. So, and your intent, by the way, if your intent is to consider where somebody else is coming from, and then you actually do that, you're going to find like a more pliable sort of context for resolving the conflict.
Yeah, that's right. And that takes us kind of to our next thing, which is the next way to resolve conflict God's way is to speak the truth in love, right? And so you speak the truth in love. Why? Okay, because you want what's best for them. And so that means you have to have the truth. But you also don't want to just light a fire by telling people the truth in the harshest way possible. Yeah. And so you do it lovingly. Proverbs 12:18 says, some people make cutting remarks, but the words of the wise bring healing. So what that means is that you speak the truth with discernment and a love and a genuine care for the other person in the situation, trying to work towards their betterment and not just your own. I love that.
That's so good. Then the next thing I want to tell you is to focus on the solution. And here's a way that I'll say it. And I'll borrow this friend from an old friend. I'll borrow this phrase from an old friend named Phil Moss. But Phil used to tell me, hey man, when you fight, like, make sure you're never fighting to be right, but you're fighting to get it right. And man, I have used this in so many ways in my own life and helping other people. Anytime you're fighting to be right, you're already wrong. You already lost. But you can fight fair. And part of fighting fair is fighting to get it right together, which is being focused on the solution. I mean, you've only got a certain amount of emotional energy. And if you spend all that emotional energy like trying to, I'm right, I want to prove myself I'm right. First of all, you're stuck all the way back at pride, which you cannot ever achieve good relational unity with people when you're hung up on pride. By the way, this is what all this is about, is relational unity.
Yeah.
All this deep dive today is how to find that relational unity and that harmony that we talked about earlier. You don't have enough to do both. And Paul talks about this in Colossians 3:13. Make allowance for each other's faults. Full stop. Yeah. I know there's more to it, but stop right there. Make allowance for each other's faults. You know what that means?
Yeah, it means you have to have room for other people to mess up.
You got to have room. If you mess something up for me and then you come and go, hey man, I really messed this up.
Yeah.
Can you please forgive me? I need to go, bro, it's fine. Let's work towards the solution. Yes. I forgive you now. How do we not do that again?
Yeah, that's right. And that's actually the last point that we have in here, which is that you give grace quickly and often. There's this awesome scene in the Gospels where Peter comes and it's outlined in Matthew 18, where it says that Peter came to Jesus, meaning, and asked, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? And Jesus says, no, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. And what is Jesus saying? He's saying, look, you need to not keep a record of how these people have wronged you. When your brother, right, somebody really comes to him, somebody comes to you and they say, look, I've done something wrong again. Are you supposed to just let that be unforgiven? And there's a reason for this that's very practical for us, and there's a reason that's very practical for relational unity. One, for us, meaning that if you hold unforgiveness in your heart, it will destroy you. And so Jesus is doing this, one, to preserve our own hearts. And then the other thing is the outflow of that is if you have this bitterness in your heart, this root of bitterness, which Pastor Stephen did a great job talking about in the last episode, it grows up like a tree, makes it huge in your life. It destroys you. It also destroys those relationships, and you can't have them back if you're harboring unforgiveness in your heart. And so Jesus is saying, no, don't, not just a handful of times. You need to continually forgive. Like you just talked about, Pastor Nate, if I come to you and I say, I messed this up, will you forgive me? It's our responsibility as believers to look at the other person and say, yes, you are forgiven. And not only is it our responsibility, but God gives us that responsibility for our own benefit and for the benefit of others.
100%. And of course, we've got this, how many times should I forgive? Somebody sins against me 7 times.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's a lot. And Jesus, of course, comes back. No, it's actually 70 times 7. And I just want to point out, like, Jesus wasn't trying to give you a math problem to solve.
That's right. It's not that. What's that? How many times is that? Let me think.
It's 490 for those keeping track at home. But what he's actually saying, he's not saying at the 491st offense that you can cut them off.
That's right.
A couple of things. First of all, when you think about biblical numbers, the number 7 represents the number of completion. Think about it. So 7 days or 6 days of creation, really there's 7. We're still in the 7th day. But on the 7th day, God rested. We're still in a very long 7 day, by the way. Day 7 is much longer than 24 hours. Okay, side note, that's an ongoing conversation. But he's saying,
tune back in for a later episode.
He's saying that forgiveness is not about like counting offenses. It's about completely forgiving.
Yeah.
There's a completeness to the forgiving. Also, he could have been referring to the Jewish practice of Jubilee, right? Which is, after 7 cycles of 7 years, all debts are released, everything goes back to reset. What he's saying is forgive fully, completely, get back to ground zero. And if there's another offense, well, then work through that one and forgive that one all the way back. Don't let this stuff pile up where it's like, you've done this. Now, he also says, as far as it be unto you, be at peace with all men. Yeah. So, some people you can't be at peace with because they are constantly at war.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, conflict does end up being resolved by creating some separation. And I do want to say, like, if you're in an abusive situation, if you're in a situation where you truly have, you and your spiritual mentors and spiritual authorities all agree, you've done everything that you could possibly do, then sometimes you may need to walk away. And there's situations like that. And I'm not giving marriage advice because that's a whole different category, but I'm talking about in a job, in a relationship, whatever. But if you haven't done every single thing that you possibly can, then keep going.
Keep going.
Keep trying.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't have anything else to add to that, Pastor Nate. What a great way to close out this episode. I can't wait for us next time to talk about our third value here at the church, which is personal discipleship. I'm excited to get into that. Until next time, everybody, thank you for joining us today on the Under God podcast. I'm joined by Pastor Nathan Brown. See you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us today on the Under God podcast. If this episode encouraged you, share it with a friend or family member. Your support helps us reach more people with God's Word. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and at undergodpodcast.com so that you never miss an episode. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, True Social, and TikTok for more content, behind-the-scenes moments, and faith-filled encouragement throughout the week. We want to hear from you. Leave a comment, join the conversation, and send us your questions. We will be answering them in upcoming Q&A episodes. Until next time, remember to think biblically about the things that matter most.